Yo, what's up? My name's Mashy, and today I'm going to be doing commentary over a run that I did for The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages for the 2019 2D Zelda Relay race. I did perform the commentary for the race during the actual event, however, much of that commentary was lost, and as such, we're going to be using the raw VOD and doing some post commentary for submission to marathons. Without further ado, let's begin. In 3, 2, 1, go. So this is The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages for the Game Boy Color. This came out in 2001 alongside its sister game, Oracle of Seasons. Both games focus on different qualities of gameplay. Is more puzzle based, whereas Seasons is more action based. And you'll also notice that their speedruns are both wildly different. Seasons is more of a generic, like standard play through the game as fast as possible, whereas Ages has a little bit more of a glitchy vibe to it. There are a lot more sequence breaks and things that we can do in this game. Uh, Speaking of, there is one major skip that we're going to be doing in this category. This is the any percent category. This includes what is called the D2 skip. As the name implies, we're going to be skipping the completion of Dungeon 2. However, we do have to go in there, and I'll explain it as we get closer to that. There's also another thing that's going on in the background while we're getting some story exposition, and that is RNG manipulation. So the Oracle games have a pretty interesting way of dealing with RNG. When you power on the console or do a hard reset of the console, it sets the RNG state to a fixed point. Then, once you once you go ahead into the title screen, it changes every frame until you hit that file select screen. Once you're on the file select screen, that's it. It doesn't change until you get in game and start doing certain actions. The main things that we need to be worried about are sword slashes, digging, enemy movement, and screen transitions. You can tell where you're at in the RNG value based upon your patterns that appear when you slash your sword. So the sword has 3 different tones that it can do. There's a high tone, mid tone, and a low tone. And the patterns that appear when you slash the sword repeatedly will tell you exactly where you're at in the RNG values. The other thing is digging up items. So you can dig up like random hearts, rupees, enemies, or the main thing that we're looking for is you can dig up 100 rupees. And that is what we're going to be doing in this first section here. I already did a hard reset before starting the game, and we mashed through that title screen and got to the file select screen where we waited and did the countdown. Now that we're in game, we're going to be doing a very precise set of inputs and movement in order to make sure that we're on manip to get that 100 rupees. But for the most part, there's not much else going on right now. We're just getting some exposition. We're going to be learning about the main mechanic of the game, which is time travel. So there are 2 time periods in this game. There's the past and the present, and you can go back and forth through them either through time portals, which there's going to be the one on the screen right there, or you can use the harp, which is the main instrument of this game that we're going to be getting a little bit later on. And the harp has 3 different songs. We're going to be getting all 3 of those songs. They increase in effectiveness in terms of traveling through time. But right now is probably a good time for any donations or just plugs that need to be done, because there's really not much going on after getting the sword. We're just going to be heading to the past, and we're going to be getting the shovel, and then we're going to do the manipulation. So this here is the waifu tree. Uh, you're going to be coming back to her throughout the game, or you're going to be hearing from her throughout the game. She's going to be your guide throughout, trying to tell you where to go. But unfortunately, something's happening in the past, and she disappears. So we have to go back to the past and save her. But in order to do that, we're going to need to get the shovel, because her cave is blocked off by a bunch of piles of dirt. And now, coming up into the Black Tower construction area, where we're going to be getting our shovel, is going to be the first major thing that we're going to be doing in terms of the RNG manipulation. So this cutscene with this foreman guy in the Black Tower, you'll notice that I stop just a little bit, waiting for that lightning. Now, the game calls RNG every so often to determine if it's going to flash lightning on the screen or not. And I use the lightning as a visual cue in order to determine that I'm on the correct RNG value. You can also do this without waiting for the lightning, but then you're going to have to do sword slashes and learn the pattern for sword slashes. I prefer the visual cue because it's a little bit easier to see. So I did a couple extra sword slashes throughout, and that's going to set me up for the RNG of getting the 100 rupee on that screen right there. Now, one thing that we can do now is, now that we have the 100 rupees, we can actually extend this manipulation into the Meiku path, which is coming up right here, and we're going to be able to try and go for another 100 rupees. Because we need 220 rupees in order to complete this game. And getting 100 rupees is really good. So, one thing to note is rooms with keys are notoriously difficult to manipulate through, because keys call RNG every frame. And so you have to move pretty much frame perfectly through the rooms with the keys in order to make sure you're still on manipulation. There are a few different patterns of the gels in that room right there that you can get, and that work. The one that I got, there's a couple different ways you can get it to work. You just need to learn the patterns and figure out how many extra slashes you need to do. And then for the rest of this, it's just moving through, doing your minimal slashes, and then we're going to be fighting these guys here. So same thing, we want to do just minimal slashes, but now we actually have to do a couple extra slashes in order to get that 100 rupee. We are on manip in order to get that right now. So once I go into the present, I'll dig up another 100 rupee before going back and talking to the Meiku tree again. Just like that. And now, talking to the Meiku tree here is very important for the endgame, because if you move anywhere to the left, she's not going to drop the seed satchel on the left-hand side. But as long as you stay directly in the middle or to the right, she will drop it on the left-hand side. And dropping the seed satchel on the left-hand side is a vital part of a trick that we're going to be doing at the end of the game. So keep that in the back of your memory, just so you can remember it when the time comes. And what the seed satchel does is it gives you different types of seeds. So the first type of seed that you're going to be having is called ember seeds. They burn things, so they burn bushes. They can also light torches. There's going to be other types of seeds that we'll be getting throughout the game as well. And we're going to be using those ember seeds in order to get the key to Dungeon 1, which is the graveyard key. And then we're going to be heading into the first dungeon, which is Spirit's Grave. This is probably another good time for donations because there really isn't anything too crazy going on in Dungeon 1. So I'm going to be trying to remember to split alongside of the run here, just to give you a frame of reference for how it's doing against my personal best. So really, like, the main things that you want to know about Dungeon 1 is that it pretty much introduces you to the concept of puzzles, introduces you to a whole variety of things. There's the block pushing puzzle, there's a switch puzzle here, and you're just going to be navigating through the dungeon, trying to get the dungeon item and the boss key. Like, this dungeon, for all intents and purposes, is essentially a tutorial. And here we're coming up on our first mini-boss. This guy can be quite annoying depending on how his pattern works out. Those little ghosts, if they grab onto you, you can't do anything for a set period of time. And then he'll probably charge into you and you'll take a lot of damage. But thankfully the mini ghosts, they cooperated nicely and we were able to take him out pretty quickly. And now it's time to get the first dungeon item of the game, which is the Power Bracelet. Power Bracelet, just like other Zelda games, lets you pick up things, namely pots. So we're going to be using that to pick up pots, pick up bushes, pick up rocks. And that's going to be used to get the boss key right here. And now we have our first boss, which is Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead has an interesting little quick kill, where if you drop the pumpkin head, do a slash on the ghost, and then throw the pumpkin head against the ghost while it's against the wall, you can get a double hit and kill it in one cycle. And now with one dungeon clear, we're going to be able to go to the other side of the map with using that power bracelet to access the Deku Forest. But before we go to the Deku Forest, we're going to have to go to the Fairy's Woods. Because technically Dungeon 2 is in Fairy's Woods, but you'll see what's about to happen. We're gonna take this rock with us, mostly because you actually lose time. You lose a few frames if you decide to throw an object, whereas if like a cutscene or something forces you to drop the item, you're gonna be optimal. And now the fairies are going to rearrange the forest here. The pattern is exactly the same every single time, so once you just memorize it, you'll have no trouble finding the fairies. And now with that, we can get to Dungeon 2. Or can we? Yeah, lifting up that boulder just kind of destroyed the dungeon. But like I was mentioning earlier, we're going to be able to use the power of time travel to go back to the past, and we're going to go and get to Dungeon 2 from there. We also used a save and quit. By entering and exiting the shop, it set our save point as the shop entrance, and that made getting back here much quicker than walking all the way back. And before we even go to Dungeon 2, we're going to have to get the harp. So the harp is our instrument in this game. Like I was mentioning earlier, there's 3 different songs that you get. You start off with the Tune of Echoes. Tune of Echoes can only be used on inactive portals. So there's going to be an inactive portal outside of this house here. We're going to be using it on that portal there. And that's going to wake it up, and we're going to be able to go to the past. We cannot freely go between the past and the present yet. That'll come a little bit later on. Right now, we can only go through these portals. So one thing to note is that the layouts are very similar between the time periods. There are a few differences. You'll notice that for the most part, everything looks similar. However, once we get into the Deku Forest area, you'll notice some slight changes. The main thing is that the entrance to Dungeon 2, which is right here, is blocked off. But there's a crack in the block. Anyone that's played a Zelda game before probably knows what's about to happen there. But we're gonna have to figure out a way to get our bombs. And it just so happens that the Queen is looking for mystery seeds, which grow on this tree over here. Mystery seeds are a mystery. They emulate different types of seeds, and they have some special properties like waking up the owl statues that give you hints. as well as being the main weakness to the final boss. But we're gonna grab the mystery seeds, and then one of Queen Ambi's guards is going to come and talk to us and take us to the palace, where we're gonna get our reward for finding the mystery seeds. So the reward that we're going to be getting is going to be explosives, because you give kids explosives for giving you seeds. That's how this works, right? But there's a fun little thing that you can do in this cutscene, is that if you leave one of your inventory slots open, so if you leave the A button open, when this guard gives you the bombs, if you press A on the exact frame that you receive the bombs, you can actually drop a bomb during the cutscene. It doesn't do anything, but it's pretty swag. But yeah, this is another pretty good time to do a donation, because this cutscene takes a little bit. So one thing that I wanted to do there was I wanted to activate Maple before going into Dungeon 2. And that is because exiting Dungeon 2 we're going to be doing an RNG manipulation, and Maple kind of messes with it. The way Maple shows up is she shows up after every 30 enemies that you kill on specific screens. So like after you kill 30 enemies, if you go to a specific screen, she'll show up. And we don't want her to show up as we exit Dungeon 2. So this dungeon, it's going to ramp up the puzzles a little bit, but we're not actually going to be completing it. Like I mentioned way back in the beginning, this category, the any percent category, involves a skip called the D2 skip, which is the Dungeon 2 skip. And by that I mean completion of Dungeon 2. We still need to get the item out of this dungeon, which is why we're here. But after we get that item, we are peacing out. We've got other things that we need to be doing. And actually, this side scroller here is kind of scary. Right there. If I didn't have iframes from getting hit by the keys, I would have died. Because the Thwomp does a full heart of damage. And you generally don't have that many iframes, so I just got like super lucky there. But for the most part, this dungeon is pretty quick. You just grab a couple keys, and then we're gonna fight the mini boss. And then we're gonna get our item and get out of here. So one thing that you want to make sure you do here is you don't want to kill too many enemies. Again, 30 enemies causes Maple to reappear. And you do have to kill quite a few enemies in order to get through this. So you got to be a little bit cautious about how many enemies you kill. But we're pretty much there. Mini boss, he says that ones without wings are no match for me. It's not true. We can just hide in the corner here and he can't really do anything to us. We just move out of the way when he tries to stomp us. After 3 cycles of this, he's going to be able to start doing like extra bounces. Sometimes he'll do 2 bounces, sometimes he'll do 3. You can potentially kill him in 4 cycles if you like throw a bomb and stuff. But 5 cycles is not too bad either. This room here, those shrouded Stalfos, they shoot arrows, and those arrows have like homing properties or something. They never miss. Like, they're ridiculous. But right here is the room that we're going to be getting the Rock's Feather in. So the Rock's Feather is the item of this dungeon. And we're going to be completely getting out of here. We're going to go ahead and save and then do a hard reset. Because like I said, we're going to be doing an RNG manipulation. There's going to be a lot going on right here, right now. So first of all, we've got an RNG manipulation going. Second of all, we're going to be doing what's called a text warp. So if you exit an inside area like a house or a cave, on the exact frame that a text box appears, you'll end up in a completely different area. So I did it right there. And then we're going to do the RNG manipulation. I screwed it up, so we're gonna reset. But what happens is, caves and houses are on the same map as the overworld. They're just located in an outer bounds area, and the tiles that are adjacent to each other don't necessarily match up to each other. What ends up happening is you end up skipping a warp point when the text box appears as you're leaving one of these rooms. And instead of warping back to where you're supposed to go, you just walk to the screen below, which happens to be this old man cave in Rolling Ridge. And now I do the RNG manipulation by slashing my sword in order to manipulate this like leg to get me unstuck from the tree. This puts me in a very late game area. This is the Dungeon 6 area. But we're not done yet. We're still not done with the D2 skip trick here. We're actually at the main point of the trick. This is the cave. So I entered the cave and did another save and quit and hard reset. We're going to slash our sword, clink our sword against the wall a couple times to set our subpixels, slash the sword a bunch of times to set the RNG, then walk to the edge of this pit here on the very last pixel, and then we're going to wait for the Moblin or the Moldorm to get into perfect RNG position, pull out a bomb, and then we're going to buffer. Buffering in this game sucks, but we got to buffer to the very last red flash of this bomb explosion. We want the very first frame of the last red flash, which is the 5th one. And then throw the bomb on that frame. And then we want to buffer again until we get to the first frame that the gel on the opposite side of the pit jumps. And we'll hear a sound of it trying to jump. We won't actually see it jump in the air. When all of that goes properly, we'll be able to get to the other side of the pit. This is easily the hardest part of the run. This trick can definitely take quite a few tries. I believe like some people can get it like first or second try. Some people it takes like 5 or 6 tries. Some people can take like 10, 15 tries. And each time you try it, it's about a minute of setup work, or maybe a little less depending on how many buffers you have to do. But the main thing here is you just want to make sure you do the setup properly every time, and then you want to get to the buffering part. Buffering in this game is difficult because, number one, you cannot buffer a menu out of a menu. You have to time your next pause, and there is a little bit of a delay between pauses that you can do. So if you press start too early, that input just gets eaten. So what we normally do to buffer is we press select and then start slightly offset from each other. That gives us 2 opportunities to get a buffer. The one good thing is that you can actually buffer inputs out of the menu. So we can buffer the bomb throw and the jump out of the menu. We don't have to worry about timing that. But it's just getting the right frame that we need. This trick is subpixel manipulated, RNG manipulated, pixel perfect, double frame perfect, and yet we do it in no reset, marathon, relay runs. That time I believe was a frame late on the bomb throw. I'm gonna try and like explain these a little bit. I think we're getting close to the one where I actually did get it correctly. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on without playing it right now. Just like watching it as a commentator. Like you can when you're playing it, you can definitely tell what frames you're hitting. When you're watching it, it can be a little bit tougher to determine those frames. Is that? No, that was a little bit late. That was a frame late on bomb throw. The reason I knew it was a frame late on the bomb throw is because the bomb explosion was super close to Link. It needs to be a little bit further out. Basically, how it's gonna happen is we're gonna jump, get hit by the bomb, and then get hit by the gel, and it's gonna do like a double damage boost. I believe this might be the one that we get it on. It's either this one or the next one, I believe. For a marathon, I will have a backup save on the other side of this pit, just in case it takes me like 10 plus tries. I don't want to just mercy kill the run just because of this trick. Yes, this one I believe is good. Yes. So we got both damage boosts and we made it to the other side. So that is going to take us out of the cave, and this is going to bring us to the other part of Rolling Ridge, which is the Dungeon 5 area. But the thing that is interesting about this area is it's home to the Pegasus seeds. Pegasus seeds are what makes you go fast. So instead of like the Pegasus boots, you get seeds, and you just pop one, and then you have like 10 seconds of just running fast. And it's really good. Lets you go super fast. It's really makes this part of the run faster. And this is like the whole reason we do the D2 skip. Is because we get Pegasus seeds super duper early. we're gonna go ahead and fight the Moblin King right now. Normally, the Moblin King, you don't fight him until you're about to go to Dungeon 5. However, we're already up here. We might as well do it. The only thing is, he gives you the reward that'll eventually give you the key for Dungeon 5. We're not going to go ahead and do that just yet. We're just going to fight him and get the bomb flower. And during the fight, I do a little bit of a setup. I stand in the top corner and wait for him to throw a bomb, and then I just do a little shimmy across the wall, and that you don't really get hit that way, and it kind of times it so that you can throw right down the middle. You don't want to throw to the left or the right of him unless you know it's going to explode before he goes to grab it. Because if you throw it too early, what's going to happen is he's going to walk over, grab it, and throw it back at you. And if he has to move to the side, he has to move back to the center before he can throw another bomb. So it just wastes time. And with that, we got the bomb flower, which we will be using later on in order to get the key for Dungeon 5. But right now, we need to focus on getting back on sequence. So, we haven't beaten Dungeon 2 yet. In order for us to get to Dungeon 3, there are a bunch of event triggers that we need to do. I'm going to be starting with a way to get back on sequence. So what I'm going to be doing is I save there outside of Impa's house just in case things go horribly wrong, because we're going to be doing a bomb boost. We're going to be doing a bomb jump to get into this grave. So you drop a bomb, pop Pegasus Seed, and then you're going to do a feather jump to try and just boost yourself over to the other side. Normally, to get over here, you'll use Moosh and Fly. However, because we did not complete Dungeon 2, the Moosh event trigger did not trigger. You have to talk to Shovel, and Shovel doesn't talk to you until you complete Dungeon 2, and then so the Moosh event never occurs, and you have no way of continuing unless you complete Dungeon 2. However, by jumping over there, we're able to get to this grave, skip the Moosh event, and we're going to get the flippers, which lets us swim, and the rope, which is the event item that we need in order to progress through the triggers here. Now, Moosh is sitting there, just minding his own business. Unfortunately for us, we cannot use him. Because we skipped his trigger, Moosh is just completely unusable. And, well, that means we can't get his flute. Otherwise, we'll soft lock. So, thankfully, getting Dimitri's flute is the route that we normally take for any percent speedruns, and it ends up being faster anyway. But we're gonna go ahead, look at that tree in town. The reason we look at that tree is because once we get Gale Seeds, you're able to warp to any tree location that you've seen. And we're going to be wanting to warp back there later on. So you just pop on the screen for a few seconds and voila, that tree is now available to use. And by getting the rope and giving it to the raft guy, that puts us back on sequence, and now we're able to continue with the normal way to get to Dungeon 3, which is by getting an island chart. So in order to get the island chart, we're going to have to help out Ricky. Ricky lost his boxing gloves, and we're going to have to go find it for him. He lost it on the beach. And, you know, they just somehow ended up under a pile of dirt. But once we get the boxing gloves back to Ricky, we'll be able to use him to climb up some cliffs, and that'll get us to Tingle. Now, if you've played Majora's Mask, you know Tingle likes to create maps. And what do you know? He's going to give us the island chart that we need in order to go rafting. But not only that, because we have 3 different types of seeds, he'll also give us the seed satchel upgrade, which gives you 50 of each seed type that you have. And your maximum capacity is now 50. So it's super good. That is also another perk of doing D2 skip. Because normally you wouldn't have 3 different types of seeds at this point. With that, we save and quit back to Rafton's house, and we sail away on our trusty raft. Sail in the ocean until we hit a storm. And cue Link's Awakening. So, once you wake up from Link's Awakening, because that was all a dream, you show up on this island. And these green guys, they steal all your items. These green guys are the Toke. They find you washed up ashore on their island, and they just take all your items. But they're very remorseful. You go up to them and talk to them. They'll be like, "Okay, I took this from you, but you can have it back, I guess." So you just have to go around talking to each one of them and get your items back. Anyone who's played this game casually knows this part of the game is very annoying and repetitive. But thankfully, in a speedrun sense, we're able to skip a vast majority of it. And the reasoning is we're going to be able to clear out the shop pretty quickly. So this is the shop here. This guy, he has 2 of your items. He has the feather and the bracelet. And normally that is the cause of the monotony here, is because every time you want to do something, you have to go back and swap your item. But thankfully, we have a way of getting both items right away. We just have to go ahead and get bombs here. And then we're going to go back and do some item duplication. So a little explanation of how the item duplication is going to work is that when he gives you an item, if you have an item in your hand, you cannot receive the item that he's giving you. So what you do is you pull out a bomb on the exact frame that he's supposed to give you, the item that you're trying to get, and you'll have the bomb in your hand and the item will just appear on the ground. Then you just walk away. You can duplicate as many as you want, essentially. And what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate a shovel, trade for one item. We'll duplicate 2 shovels, trade for one item, get a shovel, trade for the other, get a shovel, and then we'll have both items and our shovel, and we can just move on. Normally, what you would do here is you would waste a lot of time. So after getting your bombs, you would go back to the shop, trade your bracelet for the feather, come in here, and you would get your flippers. But now you can't continue in here because you would need the bracelet. But you don't have the bracelet. You have the feather. So you have to go back, swap the feather for the bracelet, come back here, swim around, you'll get the seed satchel. With the seed satchel, you can then purchase the feather. I believe it's for mystery seeds. I believe you purchase it with mystery seeds. I don't remember exactly, because I haven't done it in so long. But now you'll have both feather and bracelet, so you're able to continue the way that we're going right now. But you still wouldn't have your shovel. So you wouldn't be able to do everything that I want to do here. So what you would do is you would come this way, you would get the harp. And then with the harp, you would now be able to go ahead and navigate this maze of an island in order to activate the scent seedling tree and get scent seeds, which will let you purchase the bracelet and retain your shovel, so that you can finally use that warp point and go to the dungeon. So the item duplication skips like 90% of that. Now, Dungeon 3 is a very interesting dungeon. There's these crystals in the 4 cardinal directions from that spinner. And after breaking all 4 of those crystals, it'll actually cause the spinner to fall down to the bottom floor, which will allow you to navigate that floor more easily. But before we can even do that, we're going to attempt an RNG manipulation. The reason I say attempt is because this one can be quite difficult to do. We're going to be trying to manipulate a bunch of rooms of enemies all the way up to a very specific room. So I set it up with sword slashes, and we're going to be trying to stay on manip as much as we can. The movement can be a little precise, and you have to account for a couple different things. There are some variations depending on certain little things that happen. But so far so good. This room here is notorious for screwing things up, and I believe it does end up screwing things here. Because I believe I thought it didn't jump again, but probably did. And because I slashed my sword, it ruins the manip, and we're now at the mercy of RNG. So we're going to head up to the top portion of this area, and we're going to be going to a room with 4 Armo statues. You'll hit a button to make them come alive, and then you'll have to defeat all 4 of them to get a key. In normal gameplay, you would have scent seeds at this point, so you can use scent seeds to kill them. However, we don't have scent seeds, so all we have to do is use bombs. So we have to, like, try and use bombs, but these guys move so erratically, it can be quite difficult sometimes. Thankfully, I was able to do it one try. I'm also going for some extra rupees here, because I do need 220 in total. Those rupees put me over the top, so we now have enough to completely beat the game. We don't have to worry about rupees. But yeah, the way the RNG manipulation works is that you end up manipulating those Armo statues to move in predictable patterns, and you can throw a bomb in the position you know they're going to be in. So that way, you don't have to worry about figuring out where they're going to go. But here we pick up the seed shooter. So seed shooter does exactly what it says. It shoots seeds. The main thing about this is that, one, seeds that are shot can be ricocheted off walls up to 2 times, and 2, you can angle the seed shooter in any of the 8 directions. So coming up here, you're going to see the first instance of the angled shot with the double ricochet in order to hit the final switch, the crystal switch, to knock the spinner down to the bottom floor. And that's going to allow me to continue with the dungeon and finish it up. But for the most part, the rest of this dungeon really doesn't have too much going on. We're coming up to the mini-boss, which is fairly straightforward, and then we just gotta get our boss key. So this is probably a good time for a donation or two. So this room here has a very special property. Those bushes in the top left can spawn scent seeds. And they can spawn scent seeds even if you've never gotten scent seeds before, which is unique because most seed types can only be gotten from bushes if you've already gotten them from a tree. But those specific respawning bushes will give you seeds no matter what, and that's how we're going to be getting our scent seeds. This here's a little bit of a swag strat. It's not really faster, but I just like doing it because it looks cool. And that gets us the boss key, and all we have to do is go ahead and defeat the boss. And of course, Peahats, they are very big trolls. They love to get in your way, especially when you're trying to make a pretty precise jump. And this is the third boss, Shadow Hag. Shadow Hag's mechanic is that she will disappear if you look at her. So what you have to do is you have to ricochet seeds off of the wall in order to hit her while you're facing away from her. You can technically get 3 seeds per cycle, but it is extremely precise, and if you miss one, you're probably going to miss a seed on the next cycle. So I just go for the 2. You can potentially get a 2-2-2 instead of a 2-2 split up 2. I just got bad RNG there. It's not a huge deal, but it's one of those little variants that can happen throughout the run. And now with the completion of Dungeon 3, this is the time where you actually have to make the decision on which animal companion you're going to be collecting for the rest of the run. Because once we head to the next area, that animal companion gets locked in. So I did mention that Moosh is unobtainable because he will soft lock. Which means that we have an option between Dimitri, the swinging Dodongo, who appears right here, and Ricky, the boxing kangaroo. In order to get Ricky, you have to play a minigame, and it's really long and out of the way. So we opt for Dimitri, who all you have to do is buy the flute from the shop. Now the flute costs 150 rupees, which is why we manipulated those 200 rupees earlier. So you buy the flute from the shop, and then we're going to be heading up to this new area in order to try and progress through the game. However, there is something going on. You'll see what's going on once we get there. So coming over here, you'll notice that a lot of that screen is covered in water, and that is the indicator that you have a specific animal companion locked in. So there's 3 different types of terrain in this area, and each one depends on which animal companion you have. So because Dimitri, he swims through water, that area is covered in water. If you had Ricky, there'd be a lot of cliffs that you can jump up and like tiny holes that you can jump over. If you had Moosh, there'd be a lot of pits everywhere and you'd have to fly over them. But before we can do that, we actually have to get our animal companion, and turns out they end up getting lost in the maze of the forest. So you just have to go and rescue them there. And this is where you technically meet your animal companion and you get the flute. This is the flute that actually calls the animal. The one that you got from the shop is this strange flute, which doesn't do anything. But the animal companion itself gives you their specific flute. And it's actually faster to go ahead and carry Dimitri around instead of riding him. He moves very slow on land. And thankfully you can lift him up with the bracelet. And you can pop a Pegasus seed and move real quick. And so the purpose of this area here is you just want to talk to the lazy carpenters and get them working so that they can fix the bridge and let you move on your way. And that brings us to Symmetry City. So Symmetry City is symmetrical, as the name implies. And we're going to be getting Gale Seeds. Gale Seeds are the seeds that allow you to warp to any seen tree before. So that's very nice for backtracking purposes. But also, we're going to be getting something else around here. Before we can move on, we have to talk to these girls. Apparently, something's going on in this city, and it's causing the volcano to erupt. That's because the tuning nut is not in place. She gave it to her brother. These guys are twins. You don't have to talk to both of them. You just have to go and visit both houses and talk to the second one, and then he will give you the tuning nut so that you can go and get it repaired. You want to get the tuning nut repaired and place it back in the middle of town in order to restore symmetry to the town. But before we can even do that, there's something that we have to go do over here, and that is we're going to be talking to the composer. He has been working on a new song for us, and there's just one little roadblock. He doesn't know one little piece, so we just have to play the song that we do have, and that'll spark his creativity, and he will create a new song for us. Now, this song is called The Tune of Currents, and the Tune of Currents is a little more powerful than the Tune of Echoes that we have right now. And the way it's more powerful is we're going to see very, very shortly. Basically, Tune of Currents can allow you to go from the past to the present anywhere. So you're going to see it in action right here. We just play it on this one tile, and we'll just warp to the present. and it leaves behind a portal that we can use to get back. So just in case things don't work out the way we wanted to, we can use it to get back and do it again. But we're going to be navigating this area here, and at the end of this little puzzly maze area is going to be the restoration wall. Now, the brothers explained that the restoration wall is where we have to take the tuning nut to get repaired, because Patch lives at the top of the wall. So we're navigating through this also very symmetrical area, going back and forth between past and present, basically as a tutorial of how to use the Tune of Currents. And we're going to make our way to the wall. Thankfully, having Pegasus Seeds at this point speeds this up considerably. You normally don't have the Pegasus Seeds at this point. This area leads you to Dungeon 4. Pegasus Seeds are right outside Dungeon 5. So here's the wall. Again, having Pegasus Seeds makes this much easier than it would normally be. Like, climbing the wall with those boulders falling without having Pegasus speed, it's a nightmare. But we end up at the top, and we get to do Patch's crazy ceremony where he repairs the tuning nut, but he sends these beetles after you. You can lodge yourself in the corner there and the beetles won't be able to do anything to you, so you can just jump out of the way and slash them right into the pit and easily win. So now, with the tuning nut back in place, the volcano has stopped erupting, and now we can head to the present and find out that the volcano itself is the entrance to Dungeon 4. Now, Dungeon 4 is interesting because this is the first dungeon after dungeon number 2 that we are not going to be fully completing. So we did dungeon 2 skip, but from now on we only have to complete one more dungeon in order to beat the game. We are here solely to get the item from this dungeon, which is the switch hook. We're also going to be dipping Dungeon 5 for its item, and then we just have to complete Dungeon 6, and then we can beat the game. This dungeon is fairly straightforward. It's a fairly linear dungeon, and it's also fairly lengthy. So this is probably a good dungeon to do like a series of donations. Because there's really not too much going on, other than potentially dying. So a lot of this dungeon is just like unique little like puzzles that you can do, little jump puzzles, little pull levers. There's going to be another roll block with a unique mechanic with a bunch of floor tiles that will fall if you put the block onto it. But this is about where things get a little sketchy. This happens pretty much every run. You usually end up at this point low on health, and then the ropes in this room can be very trolly sometimes. They can just drop right on top of you and there's like nothing you can do. But thankfully I got a heart and a fairy, so we didn't have to really worry too much. And after this nice long minecart ride, we're pretty much getting close to the mini boss. There's like 2 more rooms left. We have to deal with these platforms, which they have very awful hitboxes. You can easily fall off, and then we just have to do this this little puzzle here. Sometimes those tiles can be a little finicky. You can hit 2 at the same time. But yeah, this is going to take us directly to the mini boss, who is very straightforward. Phase 1, you just want the sword to hit him. You just want him to run into the sword. Sometimes he might just like turn around and run away from the sword, but for the most part it's a fairly straightforward fight. And then the second part, you just want to attack him. But with the mini boss dead, we're finally getting close to the end. We are now in the room with the switch hook. We're gonna go ahead and complete this tile puzzle. You just have to turn every one of the blue tiles red, and then that'll spawn the chest. So that gets us the switch hook. We're not going to be using it just yet. Now that we have the dungeon item here, we're going to just save and quit and exit, and we're going to head over to Dungeon 5. So remember earlier I mentioned how we got the bomb flower? Well, now it's time to actually use the bomb flower. So once we head back up to Rolling Ridge, we're going to immediately just walk right off and go back down. That's because the Goron Elder is trapped under a massive boulder down here that only a bomb flower can blow up, apparently. And by saving him from his crushed fate, he gives us the key to Dungeon 5. And we end up refilling on Pegasus seeds because Pegasus seeds are good. You want to have a lot of Pegasus seeds so that you can go fast. And now, like I said earlier, Dungeon 5, again, we only need to get the dungeon item out of this. So we're going to be in here for a very short amount of time. We actually just need one key, and then we can go straight to the item. This is one of those dungeons where the boss key is locked behind like a bunch of keys, but the dungeon item is like right at the beginning. So there's the one key door that we have to open. We come down here, do this little torch room, and then we have a quick little puzzle to do in the next room. Just have to move the statues in the correct order, and then it'll make the chest appear, and that will get us the Cane of Samaria. So with that, it's time for us to head over to Dungeon 6. In order to get over to Dungeon 6, we're going to do another text warp. This time we're going to be doing it off of an owl statue. So the same principle applies. If you leave a cave on the same frame that the text box is supposed to appear, instead of taking you back out the entrance, it moves you to the adjacent tile, which happens to be this cave over here. So I'm opting to refill on health by grabbing a fairy there before heading back to the past. Now, before we can even get into Dungeon 6, we're going to be doing a lot of things. There's a lot that needs to happen before we can get in there. Number one, there's two entrances to Dungeon 6. There's one in the past and one in the present. So we're going to need both keys in order to get in there. But in order to get both keys, we're going to have to play some minigames. So it starts with some Goron dancing. This is a very audio-based minigame, so usually this requires a little bit of serious time. So the basic premise of this minigame is you just follow along by pressing B and A to the right beat, and you just have to get 6 out of 8 correct. And you'll get the brother emblem, which allows you to pass into their cave system. The Gorons treat you as one of their own, so they allow you to go up here. And now we're going to be able to finally use our switch hook for the first time. So the way the switch hook works, it's basically a hook shot. It'll shoot out and grab onto items, but once it grabs onto an item, you actually swap places with it. Like if it's a big item or an enemy, you can actually swap places with enemies. But you can also use it to just like grab small things like rupees and whatnot. And that's going to give us access to the target cards minigame, which is an on-rail shooter. I screwed up there. It's not a huge deal. We're gonna have to do it again. It doesn't take too long to retry. The biggest thing here is rupees, because we need to do a bunch more mini games. I'm at this point I'm thinking I might be short on rupees. But thankfully there is a backup if we end up being short. But that gives us the rock brisket, which we'll be using in a little bit. We still have another minigame that we want to do before we go ahead and take care of that rock brisket. So the next minigame that we're going to be doing is the Goron Shooting Gallery. This minigame is super easy. All you have to do is get 100 points. You're guaranteed to get an angel and a blue at the middle, like that. That gives you 130 points. All you have to do after that is just keep hitting the balls downward and get 0 points each time. You want to at least hit the ball, otherwise you get minus 50 points, and you don't want that. But if you hit it downward, you get 0 points, and it's also like the fastest amount of text, so it's the most optimal way of playing this game. And the reward for winning that is the lava juice. Again, we're going to be using that a little bit. We also saw the seed tree there, and I am definitely thinking that I'm short on rupees, so I'm going to go ahead and get the old man here. The old man in the past gives away 200 rupees. The old man in the present actually takes rupees from you. So he gave away his entire fortune, and then he's hoping to get that fortune back from some kid that burns down his tree. And here we're going to talk to this Goron. He's stuck on his post, so he can't actually go and get something to eat. So we brought him a rock brisket, and he gives us his family heirloom, the Goron vase. We ended up creating a temporal loop here, where we give the Goron vase to his ancestor in exchange for a Goronade. Now that Goron vase was given to, we gave to him, who he then gives down to his ancestor, like down the generations, and eventually that Goron gives it back to us. Yeah, it's confusing. Don't worry about it. But now that we have the Goronade, we can go ahead and talk to this Goron in this cave here. He's like super tired, but the Goronade is like an energy drink, so it'll wake him up, and he'll let us play his game, which is the Big Bang game, in order to get a key. We need that key in order to get into the dungeon, so that's very useful. This game is a game of dodge the bombs. So the general idea here is you just want to avoid the bombs. Usually going in a circle makes it so that you're pretty safe for the most part. And that gives you the old mermaid key. We still need to get the regular mermaid key. There's two different ones. The old mermaid key is used for the present Dungeon 6, whereas the mermaid key is used for the past. Now that we have the key and the lava juice, we can talk to this Goron, who will give us the letter of introduction. And the letter of introduction will now allow us to go talk to the Goron Elder, or the dancing Goron guy again. And we'll get to play dancing one more time. This time we'll get a key for our efforts, and we'll be able to go into Dungeon 6. So something I didn't mention the first time around is that generally for safety, you want to try and win the first 6 out of 8. But if you're going optimally, you want to fail 2 of the longer ones, regardless of when they occur. And then you want to just win the 6 other ones. But it's a little bit riskier just in case like you manage to miss one of the steps. You have that little leeway. But yeah, here we are entering Dungeon 6. This is the most crucial part of the run at this point. It's a very difficult dungeon. It's especially difficult because we only have 5 hearts. You're supposed to have a lot more at this point. We've already skipped 3 dungeons, so you're supposed to have 8 hearts in total. And here we get to actually use scent seeds for their intended purpose. So scent seeds, they can lure enemies towards you, or towards the scent. And you can actually lure enemies directly into pits, make them fall to their death. It's great. There's a room similar to that in the present version that requires the scent seed usage. But coming up here is going to be the worst room in the game. You've got blue wizards, you've got floor masters, you've got bubbles, and you've got bombed walls. So I purposely take the floor master back to the start because we need to bomb that one wall, and then we need to bomb this specific wall. And then we're also going to open up a wall. And basically what happens is really cool that anything that you do in this past dungeon is affected by in the present dungeon. So this wall that we're opening up now would normally be blocked off. However, by doing this, it'll now be open in the present. And now we're going to be doing an RNG manipulation. to try and manipulate the mini-boss of this dungeon. So same thing as previous RNG manipulations, we're going to do a hard reset, we're going to do some sword slashes to make sure we're on the correct RNG position, and then we're going to move on. I'm going to take this a little bit safe and use the Tune of Currents on the shore. You can use the Tune of Currents in the waterfall itself, but that puts you right inside the door, and you have to kind of do a precise movement in order to make sure you don't go back into the portal and you go into the door instead. And now, into Dungeon 6, Present. Everything in here, at least for the beginning part, is entirely manipulated, including that fall into the pit, of course. Here's the room that I was talking about where you have to use a Sense Seed. There's no other way of getting that key. We're going to do some neat little jumps in this room to get around to the other side. And then that opening there was the one bomb wall that we opened up. That would not be open if we did not do that. And I'm going to be manipulating these enemies so that the Whiz Robe appears on the other side. We can swap with it and get to the key super quickly. And we're going to continue this RNG manipulation. If you notice, there are keys in that top room, so that means we have to move fast. We gotta move fast because keys are RNG manipulation nightmares. But with everything, we're able to get all the way to the mini-boss. We're gonna do a couple extra slashes here to make sure we're manipulated, and we're gonna do the fight. So this fight can be very annoying if you don't manipulate it, but we can just manipulate his spawns. He's gonna spawn in the bottom corner pretty much every time, and then that's the fight. Normally he has a bunch of different patterns that he can do. He can slowly spin around you, you can shoot from one side. It's not a fun fight if you don't manipulate it. Here I'm doing a setup to throw the bomb so that it explodes right as it's about to fall, so that we can switch hook that diamond and get to the mermaid suit. Now, mermaid suit is an upgrade of your flippers, but it completely changes your swimming mechanics. Now, in order to move through the water, I have to mash the D-pad in the direction that I want to go. It's faster, but it is definitely more labor intensive. And coming up here is the boss key room. This room has two levers. You pull one lever and ropes appear. Defeat all four, pull a lever again, and you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting the chest to appear. Otherwise, the ropes will appear again. I got lucky and got it technically first try. That first pull is guaranteed to fail. After that, it's 1 in 4. Some people have gotten it in like 20 tries. It can be kind of ridiculous sometimes. But now that we have the mermaid suit and the boss key, we can come back to the past and we can clean up the rest of this dungeon. So this area with the dark water allows you to go underwater, and with the mermaid suit, you're able to swim and navigate these underwater areas. This is going to lead us to a small key that we're going to need in order to get to the boss. One thing to note about underwater is that you can only use whatever item is on A. Whatever item you have equipped to B will not work. And that is simply because B is designated as your surfacing and diving button, whereas A is going to be your item button. Whatever you have equipped you can use. And now that we have that key, it's time for us to make our way back through the best room in the game. We get to deal with Bluey again. I usually give him a Gale Seed because he can be very annoying. And then it's time to go deal with the Floor Masters and the bombs and everything again. So I take this a little bit safe. Even taking it safe can be quite annoying. But this takes us to one of my favorite rooms in the game, the Pointless Spinner room. There's no point to that spinner other than it maintains continuity. Because if you remember in the present dungeon, there were 2 spinners there. This one was just 1. It's just one of those like minor details, but it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense because there was no point to that room. And now it's time for a switch hook puzzle. We need to switch hook all of these diamonds onto those top 6 different colored blocks. The strategy here is just to make like a little diamond in the middle, and that lines everything up pretty nicely. And that'll get us the final small key that we need in order to get to the boss room. So Keys got in my way there, but it's not too difficult to retry. This here is Octagon. This is the boss in Dungeon 6. He is a giant Octorok. Hit him a couple times and then he'll go underwater, and then you just have to fight him underwater. We usually equip the sword on A, so that way we can use the sword while we're underwater. You can also use the seed shooter instead, but sword's better. You can generally get more hits in with the sword. I'm gonna go ahead and collect the heart container just for safety. We don't technically need that heart container, but it's a nice, easy health refill. And, you know, makes the last boss a little bit easier. Which, speaking of the last boss, it's almost time for us to go straight to the last boss. However, there is one thing that we need to do first. We need to go and get our final song. And in order to do that, we're going to go to Ambi's Palace. So the guards have left Ambi's Palace, so we can go ahead and just storm the gates and go straight on in. So Ralph here is talking about a hidden entrance. You're supposed to navigate these the courtyard and hit these buttons to reveal a hidden entrance. But we can do what's called guard skip, which you saw just there, where I use a Pegasus seed, drop a sense seed, and slash my sword, and we can just walk right past them. That strat is fairly recently discovered. The old strat was just like drop a sense seed and hope it worked, but you can actually buffer it completely and it works most of the time. Here is the possessed Nehru fight. You're gonna hit Nehru with a Mystery Seed, which will reveal Varen inside her, and then use the switch hook to pull Varen out and then slash her. Do that 3 times and that'll be the end of the fight. You do have to worry about teleports. Teleports can waste a bunch of time, but thankfully I only got a handful here. And now, after this cutscene, we're going to be getting our final song, which is the Tune of Ages. Now, Tune of Ages is really useful because it allows you to go back and forth through time anywhere. So, say, take Tune of Currents and then add the reverse from present to past, and you can just use it wherever you want, and it's a great time. The reason we need Tune of Ages is because we're about to do a pretty big skip. We're going to be doing a wrong warp to the final boss. And the way it's going to work is we're going to go back to Dungeon 6. And outside of the Dungeon 6 in the present, there is an owl statue. We're going to do an owl statue text warp, and that'll get us into a glitched cave. Normally caves don't allow you to use the harp. However, because it's glitched and the cave didn't load properly, we're able to use the Tune of Ages. And using the Tune of Ages on that specific tile gets us into what's known as X World, which is a bunch of unused tiles out of bounds that just fill the map, basically, because there's not as many indoor tiles as there are outdoor tiles. So in order to make it a nice rectangle, they have a bunch of unused tiles out there, and we're able to navigate through X World. But before we do any of that, we have to go in this secret passage, because this secret passage has a very glitched map tile. And we need to see this tile in order to access it on the map. And that's going to be the basis of the wrong warp. But so we're going to get out of bounds, and we're going to activate this glitched map tile. And we're going to do that a couple times. The first time that we do it, we're going to set ourselves in a specific horizontal position, and so that way it'll glitch our ring box. to allow us to get a very specific ring for the final fight. And then the second time we do it, it's going to warp us. So there's the glitched cave. We're going to use that, the Tune of Ages here, to get into X World, go into a specific area, use the Tune of Ages again in order to get into the past, so that way we can access the glitched map tile from the water shortcut. Get into the specific X position, activate the map, you hear the rupees there, you see that we save and quit here, and that didn't work. Unfortunately, what happened there was that I pressed left or right at the wrong time, and it didn't actually do the warp. I did the setup entirely right, but I just happened to press the button at the wrong time. So we're going to do that setup again. This time, we're going to press the button at the right time. So what happened in that second part there is we activated the glitch map tile after doing the ring box glitch. We activated it again. That put us on the left hand side of the screen, which is the positioning glitch from having the seed satchel drop on the left side all the way back at the beginning. And that text box, that save and quit text box that appeared, that is actually the save and quit text box that appears at the very end of the credits. So saving there technically beats the game, but we still beat the final boss in order to get time. And what happens is when you're on the left hand side of the screen, if you press left or right, it'll screen transition. And I happened to press left at the wrong time, and instead of bringing me to the final boss, it just left me there and it didn't do anything. But what normally happens is you press left or right at the right time and it'll skip all the text box that appears when you do this warp, which is like all the text before the final phase of the final fight. So I do it all again. We hit yes, we transition at the right time, and we're finally at the final fight. Now, we go through all this garbage and we find ourselves the red ring, which increases our attack power. You could technically get a 0 cycle here with the red ring. However, I was a little slow on the attack, so we're going to go ahead and have to deal with the spider form. And time is going to be coming up fairly shortly as we dispatch with the spider form. So time is now. So the fight itself, you can only kill it while she's in the beetle form. If you do a spin slash and 3 extra slashes with red ring and level 1 sword, you can kill it without it transforming. It can transform into either the spider or a bee. You prefer the bee, but we got spider, we dealt with it. It's whatever. And then once it transforms back, you can finally kill it again because it's in beetle form, and that is GG. So I want to thank you all for watching. This has been my commentary for my 2019 2D Zelda Relay race. This is going to be used for submission for marathons, most likely. I had fun. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope I get to do this at a marathon.